since we said that we would record this for people who weren't able to attend. So welcome everyone again. And we're just going to go through some tips and strategies for your personal statement. This is especially targeted for the CSUMB scholarship because that deadline is coming up soon, but everything that we say today really applies to a lot of different kinds of personal statements and other things that you might be applying for.
So a little bit about Zoom communication protocols, which we probably already know by heart, but it's basically an invitation to ask us a question anytime you have it. Use the raise hand feature if you'd like to, or not. Pop something in the chat if you'd like to ask a question. We'll be monitoring that as well. So even though we'll be in sort of presentation mode, we invite questions at any point of the presentation. So the things we're going to cover today, we're going to ask you to do a little bit of a writing warm-up. So, have something ready to write on, either if it's your computer or a notepad or something. And we're going to focus on also analyzing, like, what is the prompt asking you to do? I think a lot of times, we have that prompt and it's a big prompt sometimes, or there's a lot of things in there. So we're going to unpack that, and we're going to really look at what the prompt is asking you to do so you can respond accordingly. We're going to do a little brainstorming, like, who are you and what do you bring to the table, and then looking ahead to what are your next steps as you write your personal statement.
So we'll start, as we always do when students come into the tutoring center for feedback on their personal statements. We always ask for the prompt. We always ask, do you have the prompt with you? And the reason for that is because sometimes we'll read an essay and it looks absolutely fantastic, and we're like, geez, you don't have anything to work on here. But then when we really start digging in and looking at what is being asked for in the prompt, that's where we often see, areas where we could all improve, because they're asking for something very specific. And so any good essay starts with really breaking down and analyzing that prompt. So we can look at the prompt here. And actually, if someone wants to put that website in the chat, you all can have it up on your own side. So how many people are planning to apply for the CSUMB scholarship? You can give us a thumbs up or some other kind of reaction that expresses how you feel about that. All right. Okay, so a couple of you. Okay, great. And like I said, if you're applying for something else, and then Maria Elena, you said that you did apply already. Okay, great. So did you finalize your application? You submitted it already for this year, Maria?
Yes, I did.
Fantastic, congratulations. You're ahead of the game. Pat on the back. So yeah, like we said, this could apply for other things, could apply for applying to graduate school, research opportunities, different things like that. So if you're doing the CSUMB scholarship, this is the prompt that's on the website when you first kind of open up the different areas about details. And I think, it's a little bit hidden under the personal statement bar, but it's important to expand that and read it so that you prepare. So here's what it says. It says the CSUMB scholarship application requires that you type a 1,300 word personal statement. And that in itself sometimes stops people and they're like, oh, that's too much. I can't do that. Actually, we had a writing tutor a couple years ago who admitted that her first year she didn't apply because she was like, oh, another essay. And then she applied the next year and she got money. So it was like, geez, don't let that stop you. We recommend that you type your personal statement on Microsoft before beginning your scholarship application. It's kind of a funny cue, but I think they do that to make sure that you don't just do the application and then sit and write the essay all in one go in the box, that they really expect it to be a composed piece of writing, drafts and such. That's how I interpret that. Remember to describe, and then this next part we're going to go through in more detail in just a moment. When you actually start your application and open it in the platform there, you'll see this last part of the prompt in a little bit more detail. So it's definitely worth starting your application. Like open it up, write your name, look through all the parts and see what's being asked for, the transcripts and everything. Save it, and you can come back to it later. But that way you can see like exactly what they're asking in there. So that's just a little tip to start it if you haven't yet. Any questions so far? Okay, so before we dig into that prompt, Megan's going to take us through a little writing warm up so that you can, you know, kind of just get past any writer's block that you might be feeling. Sorry, I should have told you before that we're going to write. So if you need a minute to just grab a pen and piece of paper or open a blank doc, we're going to ask you to write something.
Okay, so I'm just going to keep talking, hopefully, while you guys are getting those. But essentially, what we're going to do is we have a couple of sentence starters here, and this is just a free write, a brainstorm to think about whatever you want relating to these. And this is a really good jumping off point for your essay, as a lot of these sentence starters relate to the actual personal statement for CSUMB. So the first one, which is a really strong opener, I think, is I want to pursue X career path because I am interested and passionate in Y. So I want to give you guys either 5 minutes or until whenever you guys throw up excuse me, if you guys want to put up like a thumbs up when you guys are done, or just give 5 minutes, whichever one is quicker. So that was about 5 minutes, and I know that was a little sudden for those of you guys that just jumped in. But on our next slide, we have another example that might also give you some ideas about what to write about if you were stuck on this one. Okay, so here we just have this little sample that is pretty much the same as the sentence starters you just got. And here we have this person's career goal is to be a full-time writer in 5 years. And they bring their experiences from their work with different newspapers. And then they also add in their major as well as their concentration, and then give a little goal plan, a little goal set of what they want to do in order to achieve their goals originally. So this may give you some more ideas about what to write for yourself based on our previous sentence structures.
And if I could just follow up with what Megan just shared, this activity is really fantastic because it sets you up to start thinking about the personal statement as not only a document that you share about the things you've done, the accomplishments you have, and where you are now, but where you're going. And it's, if you can think of your personal statement as almost a future thinking or forward thinking document, it's really helpful. And these kind of writing activities that Megan just walked you through can kind of help position you there, right? Like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm a major in kinesiology or psychology. This is what I'm doing here. Where do I want to go after I graduate, right? The committee really wants to know what your plan is, right? So it doesn't stop just at CSUMB. You got to push outside after CSUMB. So I just wanted to add that in as the context for this. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Natasha. And thank you, Megan, for taking us through that example. I just want to point out also, if you have some stuff on your paper, you might incorporate some of that into your introduction. So it's not that you necessarily have to, have this kind of cookie cutter approach to your introduction, but you can look at the information and think about, how do I want to present this up front so that my reader can see where I'm going? A lot of times with this scholarship prompt, we'll see writers kind of telling a story, which is they're really interesting and really compelling, but maybe in the very, very last 2 sentences mentioning kind of what their goal is. And so, those are things that you could bring up to the front. So it's kind of nice to hold on to these notes and think about where you want to put them, where you want to work them into your essay. So I mentioned before that, and I know we have lots of people who joined us, so welcome, welcome. We should probably do like a real quick introduction just so you know who's talking at you. My name is Nanda, and I work in the Cooperative Learning Center with the writing tutors. Megan, who just led us through that exercise, is one of those writing tutors. And we also have Kiara. Can you say hello, Kiara? She's waving at you from Hawaii.
Hi, everyone. If you can't see me, here I am.
Thanks.
Hi, all. And I'm the fourth facilitator, and Natasha Ullman at Undergraduate Research Opportunities Center, also known as UROC.
For those of you who just joined us because of the snafu with different addresses and such, we just kind of mentioned briefly what the prompt was, and I mentioned that when you go into the scholarship essay, you actually start the application, you can scroll down and see the precise prompt, and so that's what we're going to look at now, and we're going to take it apart just a little bit. The one thing that's slightly different from the version that we looked at before, the one that's kind of publicly available on the website, is that when it comes to community service, there's this extra part that kind of defines community service more broadly as service to community, the campus, and or family. So it's just something to think about. Those are the sort of details you look for in a prompt. Kiera is going to take us through an activity to kind of break down this prompt a little bit more so that we can see how you might go about brainstorming and planning an essay in response to this prompt. While we're on this point, and that link, by the way, is in the chat. Kiera just put it in a minute ago. Are there any like general questions about the CSUMB scholarship that you want to ask? This might be a good time to ask them. Okay, let's get into the breaking down the prompt then.
Okay, well, I'll lead you through this. So this is the raft. So we are the otters, think raft up. Well, raft is not just about our homecoming week, if you know, in the fall. This is also to help you break down the prompt. This isn't just for the CSUMB scholarship. You can use this for graduate school, if you're applying for another scholarship. This is really helpful. So raft does mean different things. So each letter has a different meaning. So R is role. So when you're writing a paper, you have a role, like you're presenting yourself as something, as a student, a citizen. Maybe you're an expert on this really obscure thing and you're writing about it to your professor and they want to go, wow, that's the role. And hand in hand of role is the audience. So who's your audience? So for the scholarship committee, it'll be read by the scholarship committee, which usually is financial aid, maybe a couple administrators. So when you're writing your paper, you got to think about who you're writing to. That's what A means in format. So in your academic career, you're going to do a lot of different kind of writing. So some you might write an essay, or you're maybe writing a letter like to a congressman protesting something, even an email. They all have different formats. You got to keep that in mind when you're really thinking about the prompt. So for the scholarship, it's a personal statement. So that's kind of the response you're going to do. And then the task. So this is probably arguably one of the most important parts of raft is the task. So if you look at the prompt, there are certain keywords or verbs that actually really telling you what to do. So we look at the prompt again in just a minute. You'll see what I'm talking about. And then S, strong keywords. So these words are going to be really important to include in your personal statement. It'll make it stand out above the rest. And even when applying to jobs, you do the same thing. You bring in the adjectives and the keywords into your writing somehow. Let's go to the next slide, please. So that's cool. You heard me say a lot of things, but let's do some practice. So with Zoom, if you look on the top of your screen, it'll say you are viewing on the Warren screen, and then there's view options. We're going to do a little bit of the annotation button, and we're going to look for T and S. So I'm going to kind of ask you guys, you can annotate or maybe drop it in the chat if you can't quite find it. That'd be cool. So we're going to look at the prompt and see if we can find any T words or S words. Remember, T is like verbs, and S is strong keywords. Thank you, Megan, for kicking us off. Thanks a lot. So here, let's look at the prompt and see if we can find what we're looking for. So please provide. This is kind of like arbitrary, but it is count as a verb, kind of telling you what to include, which you describe, like Megan just pointed out. Oh, I see Natasha. Thank you. Okay. Do you guys see any T words like maybe describe, include, provide? I see Nanda shaking her head. Can you guys see? Very good. Include, provide. Yeah, you can circle, or if you can drop them in the chat if you can't do the annotation feature, that's cool too. So how about S, strong keywords? I spot one.
Oh, I see one in the chat. Sophia said overcome. So
Thank
we'll
you.
underline that one. Good one.
Oh, the heart's cute. Thank you, whoever put that. That's cute. That's cute. Participation, like maybe in a club that maybe you started at your community college or at CSUMB, or maybe, hey, I'm in a council. Include that. Second. Yes. Hold on a second. Yeah, that's fine. Plain, please. Sorry about that. Taking care of dinner. Oh, I see a star of personal achievements. Very good. Professional aspirations. Absolutely. Leadership. Ooh, I didn't catch that one. Good one. Here's another one right here. Community service. So maybe you volunteer with the local organization, or maybe you're involved in your church. That's definitely something to include. I think that's where we got. So thank you everybody for participating, and you can do this strategy for any prompt you use. So maybe you want to like put on your document and then cross it off like on a list. That's cool too. But there you go. It's definitely a strategy I highly recommend. Thank you for playing.
Thanks, Kira, for taking us through that. And thanks for everyone who contributed on the screen there. So there's a lot to take apart here, right? So I just want to add, this seems like a little thing, but it actually kind of matters, that there's a couple places that say and or. And here's another one, right? There's an and or over here. So that's kind of telling you that if you don't feel like you have like leadership per se, you could talk about participation. If you have both, then talk about both of them. If you don't feel like you have, you know, a whole lot of campus service yet, because maybe you're a new transfer student, you've only been here like 4 days, you could talk about community or family. So it's kind of, those are like a little bit of choice points. But then the other places where it doesn't give you the or, it's when it really is just and, it means they really want it, right? So it's not a choice like, oh, you know, of all of these keywords, the one I really want to write about is the obstacles overcome, because I have a really great story to tell about that. That's great, but then also do all of the other ones as well. So that's just something important to notice, just looking at the prompt for those ands and the ors. All right, any questions or anything that kind of like came to your mind as you were taking apart this prompt?
I have a question. So I think I heard that you mentioned church participation too. Like for instance, if you are taking some responsibilities in church services or something like that, can you mention those in this type of scholarship?
I think that would be community, right?
Yeah.
Because the church is part of your community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any community service at all, I would definitely include.
Yeah,
So-
great question.
That is a good question. Can I just follow up with Maria's good question? Because it gets at also what you said, Nanda, for folks who just transferred or new to CSUMB. If you transferred from a community college, for example, and had leadership or particular, you know, you were a leader on campus or very involved in campus events in some capacity, include that in here, right? So include the stuff in your community, include the stuff that you bring from your community college experience, because what you're doing is you're shaping who you are in the community and who you are as a leader. And when I say leader, it doesn't mean you have to be president of a club. I mean a leader on campus, right? Or a leader in your community, involved. It shows that you're involved and that you're invested. And when you set up that sort of narrative, the reviewers are like, oh, okay, well, even though that this person has been at CSUMB now for a week, chances are, because this person already has that kind of those qualities and attributes of a leader and a person who gets involved, I'm sure that that person will do something like that at CSUMB. So, don't be afraid to say like, oh, you pull on some of those things. What you want to kind of stay away from is high school. So really pull on the community college, pull on the more college experiences you have. Thanks. That's all I wanted to say.
Great. Yeah, that's
Excuse me, one more question.
Go ahead.
For instance, I used to participate in the parents committee in my kids' school, and one of them I was the president in Head Start. And another time I participated in a program reading to kids by the Panetta Institute. So I could mention those in my scholarship.
Absolutely. I would say,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I don't know if you saw, I just
yes.
highlighted leadership as well, because that's leadership, right? So I'm really glad you're giving these examples, and we're actually going to do an activity in a minute that to kind of draw out more of those examples, because I think sometimes people define it too narrowly in their own mind. But those are all great things to include, and we do that a lot in tutoring when the writers are working with the tutors and they're like, oh, I haven't done much, and then they start talking and it's like, oh gosh, let's put that. So great examples. Okay, so let's do that actually. Okay, so we actually are going to do some brainstorming, and so to do this, we're going to share with you a Jamboard, and if you haven't used this before, no worries, it's very easy to use. I'm going to put the link in the chat, and let me know if you can't access that. You should be able to if you're signed in with your CSUMB account. But if you can't access it, just tell me in the chat and I'll change the settings. So what you'll see here is that there's like 6 frames on here, and you can move among them with the arrows, and each frame kind of corresponds to a part of the prompt, a part of the rafts really. So the first frame has the R and the A and is asking you to sort of brainstorm some ideas about those 2 items. And then the second frame and the next several frames that have the green sticky on them are the strong keywords. So pulling out those strong keywords and just asking you, can you think of some examples of that? So there's no right or wrong here. You don't censor yourself, just put whatever. It's sort of semi-anonymous. We can kind of see who you are right when you're leaving the sticky, but then you let go and it's just there. So it's really just a place for us to stick some ideas. Let me change my sharing here and just show you kind of how the Jamboard thing works. And we'll give you a couple minutes to work on this. So you can pick any of these frames. You don't have to start at the first one. So whatever you feel like you want to put, just pick one. And then to post, you're just going to go over here to the left-hand side, the sticky note, and just click it, type, and save. And then once you've saved it, you can move it around. You can make it bigger or smaller as you like. So we'll give you, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes to just kind of play around there. And then we'll see what ideas we have.
Dean's List is a good one.
Yeah, that mental health one, that's a good one um, to go into. That's a can be a real obstacle. And also, you know, everyone who's writing right now has an obvious obstacle overcome. So like, whereas other semesters it's kind of like, oh yeah, well, I don't know what my obstacle is. It's like, you know, everyone had this obstacle of the pandemic and continuing your education through that and all of the related challenges. So including mental health. So
Excuse me for the obstacles. Can I mention that I'm coming from ESL student, started going to school as an adult. I was about to quit nursing school because my daughter was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma. So those are things that I can mention in my statement.
oh my gosh, yes. And I hope you did. I know you already submitted yours, right? Yeah,
But
and all of those kind of hit on different things, right? Because the fact that you learned English as an additional language and you know, persisted to a high enough level to pursue, you know, the degree that you're pursuing now in nursing, you know, that says a lot to a reader. Um, so you could also actually put that under academic achievements. This is one where sometimes writers are like, oh, you know, I didn't make the dean's list or I haven't been on the dean's list that much, so I'm not sure what to put. Well, learning an additional language and becoming, you know, fluent in the academic literacy of an additional language, that's an academic achievement. You know what I mean? So you could frame it in different ways.
thank you.
I appreciate on this one that someone put external community members because these scholarships, the way they do it, they kind of bring together a lot of different scholarships from different sources and they each kind of have their own focus. So I think it does make sense to write with that audience in mind, like the people who are contributing this money to support CSUMB students. What are they looking for? That's really interesting. Great. I'm seeing some nice examples of community service. And here we've really got it all. We've got community, campus, community, family. Does anyone have thoughts on what might count as kind of family related community service?
For me, helping with my sister's schooling during the pandemic
Mhm.
is in March, and she's in middle school. If we went without school for about 2 weeks, so just making sure that she was doing what she was supposed to do.
Yeah, thank you. Again, it's another kind of opportunity that learning during the pandemic has opened for us, gives us something to write about. And especially if Kiara were to write that essay and connect that you know, that help that she gave to her sister with some other theme that has emerged in her essay. Like, let's say that she has other things in her experience that have been education related, which she does, you know, she could connect those dots. So you don't have to think about each of these little note cards here as being like separate things or separate, you know, here's a paragraph that I'm going to jump to this other thing. A lot of what you're going to do as you brainstorm is look for those common threads that connect all those experiences. And that way you're not just checking the boxes of like, I'm doing all the things they are asking for. You're doing those and you're connecting them into like a coherent picture of who you are. Great. And I see another one with a similar one as Kira's, the taking care of your niece while she learns from home. Great. Okay, I'm going to do one more flip through these cards because
And if there's time, I'd like to mention a tip about obstacles overcome.
okay, well, when we get to that card, let's turn it over to you. That sounds great. Participation and leadership. So a lot of mentoring, that's great. And so, yeah, involvement. Notice they're doing participation. That was an and or. So if you weren't the president of the club, that's okay. Talk about the clubs that you're a part of. And then, what did you contribute through your participation? Maybe it was an affinity group where you helped to create a more inclusive environment for, a particular group of students just by being there and participating and listening. And yeah, what was your impact? Good one. Oh, I guess that's Natasha, huh? Yeah, so you can connect that with something. That's like the next step. Because again, you're not just listing all the clubs you're a part of. You're telling us something. You're showing us who you are through that. Awesome, awesome stuff. Okay, let's see what else we got. Okay, obstacles overcome. Natasha, you want to say something about this one?
Absolutely. So this in experience with writing with personal statements, what sometimes happens is the obstacle quickly overtakes the entire essay because you end up sort of writing about that obstacle. I'm going to pick failing a course, that blue one. I might start going down the rabbit hole of like talking about like, oh, I didn't get support and I failed the course. And all of a sudden my essay kind of turns and takes like a different turn. And quickly this story ends up overtaking your entire essay. So the tip here is anytime you mention an obstacle, you mention it, you spend a little bit of time on that, literally a sentence sometimes, and you spend a lot more time on what you learned. What did you learn? How did you grow? What came out of that particular obstacle? How did you, in the case of Maria gave like kind of a lot of obstacles, right, that she was sort of facing. But how did you grow? How did you pull, how did you sort of rise up out of that? What did it teach you? What did it give you? What did you do next, right? So that's what we want to know as the readers. So really that's the tip, not to spend a lot of time on that obstacle, spend less time, more time on the reflection, more time on the growth. Show us what you learned and how you sort of persisted.
For the examples that I did, for instance, that I'm an ESL student and I started as an adult student, I just want mentioning that I was working during the day, going to school during the evening to learn the language. And I was able to handle all that to get to the point that I am right now. It took me a lot of time, more than for a normal student, but I was able to do it. So probably that's what you meant, right?
Exactly. I'm focused on the words that you just said. Like you said, I was able to do it, right? Like in the way that you just explained it, Maria, you showed persistence, right? You showed like balancing a bunch of things, right? And making it work. So that the making it work part is the part that you need to have in your essay. Yes.
Thank you.
Great. So this last bit, we're going to we'll go back to the slides in a minute and kind of relate this to this. So once you have your brainstorming, and of course we have this like massive group brainstorming, but what you would do as an individual writer is do that for yourself, like just brainstorm on each piece of it, looking for that common thread. And then you're basically crafting it into a story, but not just a story like, this is where I went to high school and this is where I went to college and then I did this. It's the kind of story where you have a common theme. And so, you can kind of break down the prompt and do it that way. Another way of sort of brainstorming could be just to list, more holistically, what experiences from my past have led me to where I'm going. So it is this kind of continuous through line from like, these are the things I've done, these are the obstacles I've overcome, and this is how it all relates to the career that I have chosen, which is another part of the prompt that it's asking you for. So if you can connect all of those into one big story, that's going to be your essay. And then, what skills have I developed through these experiences? That's where you have the opportunity to sell yourself. So a lot of, these things that you have brainstormed, it's not just listing, it's really making an argument for what qualities you have that make you a good student and someone who's going to succeed in the future. Any comments or questions about any of the brainstorming here before we go back to the slides?
For leadership, can I mention like something to do with I did that work, like I thought to my coworkers, like, because I promoted for like a stage 3, and then I taught my coworkers to computer skills which are needed to our work, and I helped them create their projects that they want to do project, and help them to develop it.
Yeah. So I think you see both Natasha and I kind of put your words on stickies here, and we're like, yeah, how could we spin that? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love the way you guys are thinking, like really out, you're thinking of yourself as a whole person. And that really is what the scholarship committee wants to see, is you as a whole person. So if some of your participation and leadership happen outside of school, that's great. And again, if you can then connect that to the career that you're pursuing, or the degree that you're getting, or the things that you're studying, you're just pulling all those connections in your life together and presenting that. So it's all relevant. Thanks. Great question.
I have another one. How about the research? Like, some of the activities we have in our classes, that
Mhm.
we do research projects or thesis, something like that.
Yeah.
Could we mention also one of our research project, like a topic that pertains to the, our major or the future career that we want to go into?
Yes. So I'm putting a sticky for that one too. So again, like you kind of went the next step. Like it's not just I did this really big project, it was really hard and I did well on it. It's that, it helped me to focus on what I want to study in the future. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great examples. So let's go back to the slides here. Okay. Natasha, do you want to talk about this? Do you want me to pull them all up, or one by one? You're muted.
Thank you for that. You can
Yes,
pull them
okay.
all up. It's fine. So the heart of the personal statement is really something around fit and match. If you can remember that anytime you're applying for anything, scholarship, fellowship, whatever it is that you're applying for, it's about fit and match. How do you fit in with their organization or their agency? I know that you'll be applying to the CSUMB scholarship, but I think, and this is more I might need Nanda and Jacinto, I think you can check off some particular agencies or organizations that you sort of are affiliated with, maybe through your major. And so thinking about that, right? Remember, it's not just a story about yourself, but it's also about like, what are you going to, how do you connect to the particular scholarship that you're applying to? So in some cases, if it's an environmental agency that's giving the money, for example, how does what you're doing in the major fit into their goals, right? So thinking about that. We're really big about evidence, and I love what Nanda's activity we just did with Nanda, the activity of really kind of drilling down and figuring out like, what is the evidence, right? Like, what are the things, what are the actual pieces you can actually call on, so you can really show that you're a successful student. That's going to be really important. So all the kinds of things that you just did on the Jamboard really, gets at starting to unpack what the evidence is, right? You've got to show that evidence. And so you want to think about what you've accomplished at CSUMB so far. And again, if you're a transfer student new to the school, it could be, that here are the things I'm looking forward to, right? Like, I'm looking forward to attending, being part of the sorority on campus, and talk about that and why that's important to you. You could talk about the classes, the GPA. For example, if you have a very high GPA, and what I mean by that is anything more than like a 3.0, 3.5 higher, talk about that and kind of, explain, put that in there to let them know that, that you're very, studious, that classes mean a lot, that your grades mean a lot to you. You can talk about recognition. Many of you probably come to CSUMB having other scholarships, been awarded other scholarships. Show them that in this application, because at the end of the day, this is about them. The committee is going to get, a bunch of these, and they have to choose and pick and choose, because there's only a certain pot of money, certain amount of money. So you want them to choose you, right? So show them that you're actually worth choosing, because you have additional awards, right? That someone else has taken a risk on you with those other awards. So those are some like particular tips as you can think about fit and match. And then, thinking about what are you contributing to the CSUMB community? We put that word on the Jamboard, impact. What is your impact? Right? What is your impact? What are you contributing to the CSUMB community and the larger community? What's that impact you're gonna leave? I often talk with students about like your legacy, and that kind of seems really big sometimes, but I'm like, when you're done with CSUMB and you move on to the next thing, what did you leave behind for the students, right? And when you start to think like that, you're like, oh, I can make a mark on this campus. I can leave something. And so, if you haven't, start thinking about that, because that can really help frame where you're going and what you're going to be, leaving behind once you graduate. And so you want to really look at what are the most persuasive arguments on the page so far. And I think that's where the CLC staff is just amazing and can really help you, because sometimes as writers, we're in our own heads and we can't see those arguments, but working with another writer can really kind of help illuminate those arguments and help, shine some areas where you might not have seen at all. Oh my goodness, that's an argument. Great. So I would highly recommend working with another writer and the CLC staff to really help kind of pull those arguments out. Thanks, Jacinto, for the thumbs up. I'm glad that I was right on that.
I think a couple of things I would add, just because we're kind of getting to the end. I don't know where you all are in terms of wrapping it up, but one is like for new transfer students, right? Just to leverage not only what you hope to do and what your involvement could be at CSUMB, but all the accomplishments that you had at your previous community college, right? Because that's evidence of success, and that you plan to continue that success once you're here. So it's kind of like that bridge, right? Like, I've done all these things, or I've been in all these leadership roles, or here's my GPA in my community college, and because of that, I'm going to be successful here at CSUMB, right? With the support of this scholarship, hopefully, when you get it. And then also, I know we talked about this yesterday, but not everybody that was here was yesterday. And just if you can give folks just like a couple of things about like letters of rec, like one, like when should they be asking, right? And like what is a good amount of time to let their recommenders know, like how many weeks or months ahead. And then also, if for the people who joined late, I don't know if they may be caught on to this or not, but if you can let them know if they need support in writing this letter and letting somebody look at that from the CLC, how they would go about that.
Yeah, definitely. So these questions that we're showing you right now are just some suggestions that of the type of questions you could ask if you come and work with the tutors, and we're going to show you in a minute how you can do that. But these questions kind of will help them to like give you the kind of feedback that you're looking for, that fresh pair of eyes. The next steps. So you mentioned the letters of rec. So if you didn't come to the workshop yesterday, the letter of rec should complement your personal statement. So if you even have brainstormed some ideas for your personal statement, those are all points that you can share with your letter writers so that they can kind of align their letter with your personal statement. That's really helpful for them. If you haven't approached anyone about writing for you yet, you should do that like this week because they need some notice to write that kind of letter. Natasha, you want to say some more about these next steps?
Excuse me, this is Marilyn again.
Yeah.
I already submitted my application. Can I still revise my personal statement with somebody and resubmit it in my application?
I don't know the answer to that.
What's the window, right? If you submitted, is that what you're asking? If you can go back and revise?
Yes, if I can revise it and turn in the new paperwork, more revised by somebody of you, like you are the professional in this, so it might be better looking. Same information probably, but
right.
Yeah.
Better exposition or something like that.
Yeah. Jacinto, do you happen to know, or that might be a question for the scholarship committee, like Ashley, for, to find out if you've already submitted.
Exactly. I would email Ashley McCallan and ask her that question. She's the one who manages all of the scholarship committee and process. So she would be able to give you the answer for that.
Do you have I can look for her information really quickly, or if somebody wants to pop her email in the chat.
I'm working
Because
on it.
oh, thank you. Thanks, Kira. Yeah, Maria,
No
because
problem.
you have some time, right? And so maybe they can release your application or something. I don't know. Yeah, like, let's find
Yeah.
out. That's good. It's a
Yes.
great question.
It is a good question. So I think it's an email to Ashley McCallan. So this is what I was talking about, when you start your application, this is where you can you should go ahead and start it. If you're planning on applying, start it. And then just save and keep editing. And then you can continue to edit it until, right up until the due date. So, if you've already done the finish and submit, that's where you might have to do something, to kind of see if you can resubmit your essay. But otherwise, just do save and keep editing. And then we do recommend that you actually put the names of your recommenders here. If you don't have the letters already, go ahead and put their names and email addresses once they've told you, yes, I will write for you, because the system will actually generate like a reminder emails to them, which you want that because you don't want your recommenders to forget that they said they were going to write for you. So those are some of the next steps. It's like, go ahead and start the application online and save it. And then really just kind of the things that we suggested, some brainstorming, use rafts to deconstruct the prompt, do your brainstorming around those elements of the prompt, and then schedule how you're going to write it and how you're going to get feedback on it. And then meet with a writing tutor. So how to meet with a writing tutor, Kiara put our website in the chat already. So you can see what we offer there. Tutoring starts on Monday, but in fact, tomorrow, Friday, we're doing kind of a sneak preview of our new drop-in writing schedule. And so if you're free tomorrow afternoon between 3 and 5, just come to our homepage, and there's a link that will guide you to joining our drop-in writing. And then you don't need an appointment for that. Just stop by. There will be several tutors working, and you can either work on your brainstorming with them. You could draft an email to write to one of your letter writers that you want to just have a second pair of eyes on, any of those things. And sorry, I went 1 minute over. Go ahead, Natasha, if you want to say anything else.
I was just going to finish up and say thank you. And we've left a evaluation link in the chat if you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes. It literally is not that long. We just want to hear from you in terms of what you got out of the session, and it'll help us for planning next time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
thank you,
so much
Jacinto.
for coming. And thank you, Jacinto, for organizing this.
Thank you all for showing up and doing awesome work.
Yeah, that's a good group. Great questions.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good.